It's always about consistency for me. That's how I get books written. I know exactly what my schedule is going to be, and I'm consistent with my marketing as well. Everything can be repeatable, and I think that's what that's why I've written like 25, 26 books. And everybody's consistency is going to be different. I always tell people if they can be consistent in whatever it is that is consistent for them, whether that's writing a little bit on the weekends, or if it's writing a little bit after work or whatever. That's basically what has gotten me here.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Pint and Portal Author Podcast. I have a question for you. What would you do if you had written 20 books, spent nearly a decade trying to market and sell them, and things just were not working, and you hit a wall and were ready to walk away from writing entirely? Well, my guest today hit that wall, but instead of quitting, she decided she was going to start again. She began with a new pen name, a new genre, and zero audience. And through all that, she figured out how to get 900 pre-orders for a book that she hadn't even finished yet. So I wanted to know what tactics she used and how she got to where she is today, because after that, she got an agent that approached her for a traditional published deal and has gone on to sell thousands of books in the cozy fantasy genre. You know her as Jay Penner, the author of A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, and her upcoming release, Death Meets Cute. And what she tells me is not something you're going to want to hear. Trust me, I didn't want to either. Because what she used was a combination of strategy, consistency, and just a willingness to put herself in her reader's place and think outside the box. However, it is an important conversation, and we have so much fun talking about how she turned her author career around by being willing to think outside the box and building an audience. And like I said, her strategy is what enabled an agent to contact her based on only a few sample chapters and the online strategy she had committed herself to. If you've ever felt stuck, burned out, or like you are just flipping your marketing budget into the void, this one is for you. I'm excited to talk with Janetta Petter. I'm excited for it. I hope you are too. Let's get started. Before we do that, though, a couple of things. First, if you have listened to these conversations before and gotten any value out of it, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. I know everyone says it on their channel, but it really does help me reach authors like you who are trying to grow a successful author career. I'm here having the conversations that I want to have with these other authors who have made it happen, and I'm just happy to let you listen into it, but I really would love to be able to reach a larger audience and to help more authors, because that's why I'm putting these conversations out there. If you have already done that, great. Thank you so much. Please hit the share button. Copy the link and put it into your Facebook feed, your Instagram feed. Share it wherever your following is, because I would love just to reach more authors like yourself. Thank you so much. I appreciate it 100 million times over. And that brings me to the sponsor for today. Don't scroll past, because it is still me. My special edition cover is finally in. My proof came in from the printer. This is the book for my Kickstarter campaign, launching on April 28th. And it is for my latest cozy fantasy book, Flower and Forge. It is The Hobbit meets The Wizard of Oz with pastry. And so if you are a fan of pretty fantasy books, if you enjoy cozy fantasy, if you enjoy epic fantasy, this is a great book for you, because I really tried to cross the void between the two. It is an epic adventure where a baker and a wounded warrior go on a side quest of healing and discovering where they belong. The campaign will only run for 3 weeks, so do check out the link in the show notes and hit the notify me on launch button if you're watching this before April 28th. I would love it if you would check it out. Thank you again. Now, let's get on with the interview. Okay, so welcome back to the Pint and Portal Author Podcast. I'm super excited. I've got an amazing guest with me here today. Janetta Penner is the author of several cozy fantasy books. We had a chat in the old format of the greatest podcast in the multiverse. It's been 2 years, just about to the day. I looked it up before we started talking, and it was May 2024. Welcome here, Janetta.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And so much has happened in 2 years.
It has. But That's life.
So, for listeners who may not know who you are, can you just give us just a brief introduction and tell us a little bit about, because you have people probably know you best for your cozy fantasy books, but you have many more books that you've written as well. So we talked a lot about that journey last interview. So I think if people want to know dig deep into your transition from dystopia to cozy fantasy, they can go back and watch that. But just to kind of catch us up, what did I guess, yeah, a brief introduction and tell us a little bit about, your journey in writing.
Yeah. My name's Janetta Penner, and I also go by Jay Penner for my cozy fantasy books. My journey of writing started in about 2014, whenever I started writing dystopian, and that brought me all the way up past 2020. And I was feeling kind of done writing dystopian. I'd written about oh over 20 books, mostly in the dystopian genre, and then some in urban fantasy. So I felt done, and I was ready to either move out of writing or move on to something else. So I decided to try my hand at some cozy fantasy because it was newly popularized. And I thought, well, this is an underserved genre. So let's go ahead and give this a go. And it's a totally different thing than I was doing before. So gave that a go, wrote A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, and here I am.
And here you are. I mean, can you believe 2020 was 6 years ago now? Doesn't that just
I know,
seem
right?
unbelievable?
I know.
You know,
Yeah.
so now, so yeah, we talked a lot about that journey last time because I think at that time
Right.
you had just the third book in that series was out, I believe. Uh,
Sounds about right.
yeah, or it's just about to come out. And since then, quite a bit has happened. And so I would like to kind of
Yeah.
talk about kind of what's happened in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, like looking back, maybe not at our last interview, but looking back at, at that turning point when you switched genres, did you have any idea or do you think you could have had any idea of what that next part of this journey would have looked like for you? You're just about possibly to give up writing. You decide to write this cozy fantasy. Looking back at that turning point for you, did this evolve in any sort of way that you had anticipated?
Well, I'm the type of person who never does a whole lot without having an end goal for it.
Hmm.
So when I launched my cozy fantasy and I was deciding to change pen names, I kind of tried to look back on how I launched my first series, which was my most successful. My debut series was my most successful. So I knew there were some things that I needed to do in order to kind of gain a new audience. And looking back, that was putting people on my email list. And obviously, that really wasn't going to be the thing. It was okay to put people on my email list, but it wasn't going to be the thing for launching a new book, new pen name. So
Right.
I delved into TikTok and Instagram. And
Okay.
after a couple of months was finally able to find some success and get people seeing my videos. And so, like I said, I always go into things with an end goal, and the end goal was for this series to be successful and for it to sell books for me. So there's some surprise because I've had series that didn't sell great. They were okay, and so you never know what's going to sell, but I
Right.
have high hopes for every series that I do that it's going to do something. Knowing a little, being in the indie and knowing a little bit about the industry and understanding that underserved genres often can be very successful if you can get in there quick enough before everybody else is writing that. I was
Right.
lucky enough to be able to write quick enough and get the book out, maybe a year. I think it was maybe a year after Travis Baldry's book kind of blew up. Can't Spell Treason Without T came out in that time frame, but there really wasn't a whole lot else yet. There were a few little books that were indie that had come out that were
Yeah.
kind of around, but just knowing that it's like, okay, this I kind of knew, that this could
Yeah,
be something. What it's going to be, you never really know, but
for
I
sure.
I knew it could be something. And then particularly before I launched the book is when an agent contacted me. So I was like, okay, this there's something here.
There's
I
something
knew
there.
I was
Yeah.
doing well at that point because I think I had 900 pre-orders.
Wow.
And it was Oh, was it? No, it was print as well as ebook. And it was not, like
Okay.
900. And so I knew, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this is going to be something. And then I had an agent contact me and wanting to sign me based on just seeing like the first 3 chapters of this book, because I had that
Nice.
on my email
Okay.
to download so that people
Right.
could then pre-order the book. And if they liked
Yeah.
what they were seeing, they could pre-order the book. And one of the people,
So you weren't reaching out to agents, like an agent reached out to you. You weren't soliciting to be
no,
agented at that point. Wow.
I have had no goal in my writing career to have an agent, to be traditionally published. I was feeling comfortable with what I was doing and I was making money. I mean, that really was my goal, just to make enough to be a job, or
Right.
whatever. And
Yes.
so I was
Yeah. Of
okay
course.
and comfortable with that. So when the agent reached out to me, I was a little like, okay. And so, but listen to what she said. It's an agent, it's Kimberly Brower, and she represents a lot of indies who have either sold just their print rights to a publisher, or she just does foreign rights for them. And so there really was no downside for me signing with her, because
Nice. Yeah.
I probably wasn't going to do the foreign rights that always freaked me out, to like deal with a foreign agency, and so I
Totally. Yeah.
felt way more comfortable, if that was going to happen, to have somebody taking care of that for me.
Right.
So totally great. I thought, okay. And then, as we signed the contract, she's like, "Are you open to me shopping it?" And I'm like, "Sure." It's still no, there's no commitment. If
Right.
just because someone
Yeah.
makes
There's
you
no
an offer
downside.
doesn't mean you take it. So there was no
Yeah.
downside for me to do that. And so she did. She shopped it for me, and Poison Pen picked it up.
That's great. So there was a transition period in there because when we last chatted 2 years ago, you weren't traditionally published at all. It was
No,
just
I think
like
so.
for the series, it was just your self published. So what did that process, I guess, look like for you? I'm thinking more from the perspective of, let's say, a listener who is maybe in the process of shopping their work, but they have books, their books are indie published. Because a lot of people, I think, are afraid to self publish their book because they're afraid that they'll never get a chance to traditionally publish, and they do want to leave that option open. So, what did that look like, I guess, from your perspective as having these books already self published and then
I
transitioning
guess
into traditional
I was
published?
I was in a way surprised that it was getting picked up, because especially at that time, there were not as many books coming onto the market that were getting picked up by a traditional publisher. That has definitely
Yeah.
changed in the last couple of years. There are a
Mm,
lot of books that have been picked up that have already been published. Um, and they get picked up for either full rights or just the print rights. Yeah.
yeah, or even just the audio rights, like, I've seen that quite a bit lately too,
Or
like, a
yeah,
publisher will
or
pick up just
audio
the audio,
rights or
yeah.
something like that. Um, yeah, so that's just kind of how that went. Again, it was just like me testing out things along the way. That's really
Yeah, right.
what that was. For me to accept going ahead and going with Poison Pen, a lot in publishing is a risk. And from one series
Mhm,
to the next, you never know what's going to take off.
sure.
And so I thought, well, this is another way for me to have multiple income streams. If I
Right,
have some money coming in this way, and let's just kind of see how it goes. So,
right.
but
And so
I would definitely say, for people who are thinking about shopping it, it depends. I mean, you really don't know if that's going to be. I mean, it's going to be a book that the publisher obviously thinks there's going to be some success in. So it's probably going to be a book that has already had some success. I think it's less likely, if it hasn't had a lot of success, that a publisher is going to pick it up. Or if it doesn't look like it's going to have a lot of success, the publisher isn't going to pick it up. But it obviously, these days, it doesn't totally kill your chances, to publish something. I think that there's a pretty good, it's probably still small, but there's a pretty decent chance that if it does well, a publisher might be interested in it.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I think, it even used to be because 'cause I've heard some authors say, if you self-published a book and it didn't do well, that killed your chance of a traditional publisher ever picking up one of even a future book,
Okay.
and I don't think that's the case anymore. Obviously, that's not the
I don't
case
think so.
anymore, right? Yeah, yeah. But and I think too, so I mean, so people listening are possibly hearing that, okay, well, that's great. You switched to a hot genre, but there's more to it than that, because I mean, you wrote this book for a hungry audience, but I mean, 900
Yes,
pre-orders doesn't just happen, right? So what you mentioned TikTok and that, so but what were you doing strategically, I guess, to get yourself in front of people? You had, because you had 20 books out under a different pen name. I mean, it was your full name, not, but like still a different name, a different genre. So people still had to hear about you and this cozy book that you were writing.
for sure.
I mean, 900 pre-orders is incredible for a new genre under a new pen name. So what were you doing to set yourself up to get to that point?
Well, again, whenever I was looking at strategy for publishing this book, I was look again, like, how can I recreate what I was doing before? Whenever I published Configured, which was my first series, I think I had like 3,000 people on my email list. And these were people who I had never written anything before. So I had 3,000 people on my
That's awesome.
list without anything to really give them. And
Wow.
so I thought, well, I need
So
something like that again. So
okay,
I
so
opened up
like, just to
TikTok
stop,
and
not to cut you off there, but I don't want to miss
yeah, go
this.
ahead.
Like, how did you get those 3,000 people? If you had no say, like if you had no book, how did you get those
It
3,000 people on your list
was
to begin with?
a huge amount of it was Facebook ads.
Really? Okay,
I
so you're
think
running us to your newsletter.
I offered a freebie
Okay,
that wasn't even my writing. What I did is I created a page that led people to all the free books that were on Amazon. Obviously, this doesn't work anymore. This was just and it wasn't totally, the market wasn't saturated in that there were all sorts of like stuff your Kindle and stuff. There wasn't any of that in 2015. And so
right.
people didn't really know that there were all these free books. And so I made a page that led people to all of these young adult titles. And so I did a Facebook ad and people signed up and they signed up for my newsletter. And so I was lending them things, getting them excited about the
Yeah.
book and stuff. And like I said, I came in right under the time frame where all that got completely saturated. And so it was just kind of a
So it's
weird
good
freebie, but it
timing.
was me like, I don't have anything to give these people yet because I am
Yeah,
literally learning to write right now. And I didn't have anything for them. And so I
right.
thought I'm going to create something that has value for people. That I know that these are young adult readers. They weren't necessarily specifically for dystopian readers, but it was young adult readers that I knew I could get on my list and I could start emailing them and getting them excited and maybe giving them little tidbits of my book or whatever I was doing it was a long
Yeah,
time ago, so I don't even remember exactly what I did. But yeah, that's what I did. It was
that's
just this
incredible.
like
That's
kind of out of the
brilliant.
box idea
Yeah,
for me, and
but
it worked.
yeah,
So, yeah, so
but
I
that's
had like 3,000,
brilliant.
I think I had like 300 requests for art copies of that book. And,
Right.
it was kind of wild. That whole thing just kind of like turned out. And again, I was trying to recreate that for this book, have people
Right.
online for art copies, get people to pre-order it. And again, I knew that newsletters weren't going to be it. So I thought, okay, well, it's social media. And I actually
Right.
already had an Instagram account and maybe had done a little bit on it, but it wasn't great for me. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to TikTok because everyone's talking about TikTok and failed miserably for a couple of months, but spent time watching what other people were doing and what was getting people views. And I, I found another author who was actually in a similar genre to mine. So what she was doing felt familiar for me. And so I was able to kind of like pick up on what she was doing. And the first time I posted a post with the strategy she was using, it got like 47,000 views. And
Wow.
before that, I was
Wow.
getting, the 200,
Yes.
the regular 200 views. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to get me that
Yeah.
far in this. And so I said, okay, well, this is the strategy. And so it's not that every video got me 47,000 views from then on, but I saw a lot more success and was able to kind of like hone in on what the hooks were and what people were responding to. And I did it over and over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
then once that started working, I was like, I really should be posting these over to Instagram too. And so I started posting them to Instagram, and Instagram was actually quite a bit more successful than TikTok. I
Hmm.
have about 5,000
Interesting.
fans on TikTok, where I have
Okay.
25,000 fans on
Wow. On
Instagram. So
Instagram. Yeah.
what I was doing and the genre and everything definitely connected more to people on Instagram versus TikTok, and that's
Right.
still the case for me today. That's it. I get way more views on Instagram easily, whereas on TikTok, something might just again get like 2 or 300, sometimes maybe a little more, and then it'll
Right.
have the random 1,000 or 5,000, but no, rarely much more than that on TikTok.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I just like the strategy that I found. I did it over and over and over and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And that's
Yeah.
what worked on Instagram is actually probably where I got most of my
More of a
pre-orders.
okay. Yeah, and that's really cool. I really like, first of all, the initial newsletter strategy is just genius. I mean, but you're seeing a need from your readers and or something you could offer them, even if it wasn't something you wrote. It was, okay, well, not everyone at that time knew that these free books were available. Here are some free books. Come follow me and I'll, share these and my own book eventually with
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Yeah, but the same thing with social media. You kind of looked at where the readers were and you kind of met them where they were. And you're like, okay, well, here's what I'm writing at this time. If you're interested, here's the arc, here's the pre order. And obviously that resonated.
Yep. And
Um,
then I did give them the little preview of the book, in the email,
yeah,
so that they could at least see it. I was able to do that this round.
yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah. It's interesting to me too that, that TikTok or that Instagram was working for you better all along. It's only recently that I've found any success on Instagram. It used to be that
Really?
it was I would get moderate success on TikTok and then it would disappear and then it would come back. And now I can't seem to do anything with TikTok. But then Instagram has seemed to have picked up at the same time, and YouTube Shorts actually, I've been sharing there recently. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
you
have
kind of,
mine on YouTube. I just started doing that probably less than 2 months ago. I started
yeah.
sharing on YouTube, and I would say I get views on the vast majority of the posts that I put up there. Sometimes they don't go, and I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah, they'll get
what's going on?"
one
But
view and they don't tell you why.
yeah, I'm like, "What word did I use that was wrong?"
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah. And it's really like, who knows what their algorithms are doing, right?
For sure.
But yeah, but a lot of it is just coming down to finding where your readers are and how to approach them in a way that resonates with them. Yeah, and I find that difficult. And I think the other thing like authors find difficult is that there are so many ways that they could be in. There's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, well, not Twitter, but
Mhm.
YouTube. Like, how did you decide that TikTok at the time? And how did you decide, I guess, that Instagram to pivot into Instagram out of all the different things that you could be doing? What was it that made you realize that's where your readers were?
I think for me, again, I'm a very results oriented person. If it was getting views and it seemed like it was paying off, I was like, oh, okay, that's where I'm going to put most of my time. I have a hard time sticking with things that don't show a whole lot of results and don't feel like I can continue to get results. Another thing too is as I mentioned before, how I found what works and I do it over and over and over again. That's how I work the best. Is like I can expect what I'm going to be doing today, and I'm going to do that again and again, and I'm going to repeat that again and again and again. Because otherwise, I don't have the brain time, or whatever to be putting towards like my creativity is going to go into my writing and the time for that, and the other stuff I need it to just be I need to be to expect to know what I'm going to be doing on this today, that I'm going to be posting 3 short posts to it. I'm recently working with a social media person who's helping me do a little bit more community based stuff where it's a little bit longer posts and stuff that's a little bit more engaging, but even that is minimum. I'm looking to do, maybe a talking post, maybe 4 times a month, 3 or 4 times a month, something like that, once a week or whatever. Trying to do a few more stories just to engage people, ask questions and things that would be related to what I'm doing, like stuff on baking or whatever,
Hmm.
just to
Yeah,
just to
right.
engage with them a little bit. But in general, kind of the bread and butter is the easy 5-second text over me doing something that you've seen me do over and over again. You know, you've
Right.
seen me
Yes.
baking in my kitchen over and over again. It's really recognizable. Um, and understanding what sort of hooks work for the people, and trying to, like, if a hook works, how can I do that a little bit different for next time or whatever, but it's basically the same thing so that I can
Right.
expect everything every day. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I mean, that's really, I'm just a results-oriented person, and I don't like to have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And on other platforms, like, say, Threads, yes, I can put my videos there, but it's much more of a text-based. So
it
I
is.
need to be going in and doing text-based stuff, and I'm like, "Okay, this is different than I'm doing on everything else." It means that I have to then put more brain power into this, and it's like, yeah, I don't, unless I'm seeing a lot of results, I'll probably just say, "You know what? I think that I'm good with what I'm doing here."
Right. Right. Yeah, because I mean, we can't be on everything as authors, right? We just don't have the time or the and to your point, the brain power, because I'm the exact same way. I've been posting, my reels the same way for, 5 years because I don't have the capacity to think of anything else. My hesitancy in TikTok and getting on TikTok myself was that I thought it was this song and dance platform. I'm like, I don't have time to
Right.
come up with skits on top of everything else.
Right.
Oh,
Way
but
too
then I
time
saw
consuming.
But then I saw some people doing what you're doing, and what I'm doing now is, with the face and the text over. That's I'm
It's
like, well, I can do
attainable.
that. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I can do that, and I found some success with it. It's ebbed and flowed over the years, but so that's still what I do because it's easy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I'm the same with Threads. I'm not on Threads because I don't have time to think of something to say on on Threads. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a full-time job. So, you gotta pick and choose the platform, like, something that's, both easy and but also you have to be seeing some results from it or it's not worth the time
For
to do it
sure.
either, right? Yeah. So, like, I like that concept. So you're doubling down on kind of what works. I mean, you saw TikTok was working. You doubled down on it. You expanded to Reels and now to Shorts. And I think I don't know why it takes us so long to come to that conclusion that, okay, well, I saw a little bit of success here, but let me try something else over here. And, because this might work better. But instead, what we probably should be doing is taking that little bit of success and doubling down on it so that, like, we grow that. Um, it's taking me a while to figure that out. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
I think
think
it's easy.
as creatives, we want to be creative in all these other things.
Yeah,
Like, I might want to do skits, but it's too time consuming,
exactly.
for
We don't
me
have
to
an
do.
afternoon to do it, right? Yeah,
And you need an afternoon, and then you're editing it, and all this kind of stuff. And it's just, unless someone really, if I really nailed it and, people latched onto it, great. It's probably gonna take me a really long time to really nail that sort of thing, if I
yeah,
ever do. And so the time and effort to put behind it hasn't been worth it for me to do that.
right.
The talking posts that I'm doing are quite structured as well. And so I know exactly what, if, taking the topic that I wanna talk on, the different parts of the structure that I wanna do. And right now I'm just doing them as voiceovers because that
Okay,
was the barrier to entry to that was lower for me. The editing time is lower to do it that way because I take a video that I like, if I'm cooking or something like that. I'm thinking of some ways to kind of expand that in order to, like, retain attention a little bit better, but it's still not gonna be super complicated. And I just found that the voiceover is really easy because there's just less takes with it and stuff. Than if you're
yes,
on camera and you're like, "Oh, I did something weird and I've gotta now I gotta now fix that." And so that the barrier to entry for that has been lower. And I think it's something that, like I said, 3 to 4 times a month, I can probably record a voiceover and then put it to the video and then post it,
hmm
just to kind of, again,
yeah.
create kind of community, ask people questions, things like that.
Right. I like that a lot. I've strayed away from I'll every once in a while do a talking video if I get something in or have something, important to say, but I also find that those are my least watched videos. So,
For sure.
I was like, why am I doing this? I don't like doing them and nobody's watching them. So,
For
I've
sure.
just kept on with the same the same format.
Yeah. I think for me, the talking head video, well, they're not even talking head videos, like I said, voiceover videos. They're a little bit
Mhm.
more of a storytelling time, so I use it as that. It's not just me talking about something random. It's usually something either that's happened in my life or something that, I feel like the people who follow me might be interested in or dealing with or whatever. And I have done three, and one of them has done fairly well. I was surprised at the amount of comments and things that I got. And the other two have done a little bit, not as bad as they could have done. But I think it's worth for me exploring and kind of like honing what that is. And, again, like playing with how I'm doing the video to retain attention and stuff like that. But yeah, it's an experiment. I don't think it's more to just kind of create community within on my page, not really to necessarily sell books. So I have to look at it
Right.
as that way. It's not to sell books. So if it doesn't
Yeah,
do that well, it wasn't to
right.
sell books anyway.
Fair enough. That's a good mindset to have because then you're not disappointed with the result if it doesn't do well
For sure.
because that wasn't your goal anyway. So what would you say to someone who's maybe let's say they're where you were at, in 2020, where they have a number of books behind them. They're wondering if it's worth putting something else out. They have an idea, but they're tired, and they're looking for, they don't want to just write another book and put it out into the void, let's say.
Right.
What would you recommend? Where should they start? Should they, how can they approach it now in, 2026? If they need to start fresh, let's say.
Right. You know what? I've always been a big proponent of ads, and a lot of people aren't doing them. And I know not everyone can afford to do ads, but I think they are a good way if you can put some money into something like Facebook ads or Amazon ads, to get eyes on your book. It's easy to put something out there and then hope it'll pop off. And sometimes you have to be involved in that process of like,
Hmm.
because this is a business and you have to, get it in front of eyes. So either you're going to have to learn something like Instagram or TikTok and, get that going if you don't want to pay anything for it. So you kind of put in the time in order to do it, or, start looking at things like ads so that you can get eyes on it. Maybe
Mm,
people signing up for a sampler of the chapter so that you can get pre-orders on something. I think I was doing that a little bit for bakers too. If I remember right, I might have been doing it to a
yeah.
small degree, some ads for that
Okay.
whenever I was promoting it. But yeah, I don't know. If people are tired, try something new. you know how it goes. And I think something new can also give you a new mindset, and I think that was kind of a reset for me from going from configured in 2016 when I launched that, to 2023 when I launched Bakers. There were 3 series in between, that I wrote in between in that. And I didn't launch any of those in the same way I launched my first book. I kind of
Interesting.
just, and it kind of felt like, oh,
Right.
well, I have an audience and I'll just push this out and, people will find me that way. And that was partially true, but I didn't go in as hard on launching it. And whenever I kind of reset into something completely new, I was like, I have to launch this. Otherwise, I've been in this long enough to know that you can't just stick a book out there and hope people will find it. You have to
Right.
get eyes in front of it. And so
Yeah.
that, it's kind of like this new mindset helped me to be creative on how I got it out there versus what I had been doing before whenever I maybe for those other 3 series just was not being as creative and, trying
Right.
new things and stuff like that. So I don't know. Sometimes
Yeah.
a new adventure can
A new start.
spur some new creativity in different areas.
I think that's very true though, because, and I don't know why we get into the mindset of just putting a book out there, because I know I've fallen into that trap as well. And when, just in you saying that, when I look back at the launch of Bartender Between Worlds, which was my shift into cozy fantasy, I did the same thing. I took it at, a fresh approach. I tried different things. I was like excited about it. And for the 8 books before that or 9 books before that didn't do anything, I was like, well, I didn't try all that with those because I had sold a couple of
For
the
sure.
first copies of my initial series. But it's so true because even when I look back at so I'm about to run my 3rd Kickstarter for my cozy fantasy series. The first one did really well and the second one did well, but I felt like I lost some of the momentum that the first one had. And at the time I couldn't figure out why. And now looking back, I'm like, Well, I didn't promote it. I was actually looking to reuse some reels that I had posted for the last two campaigns. And I was looking back on my account. I'm like, I didn't post a lot for this one.
Right.
Well, no wonder no one found it. No one knew found it,
Right.
right? It had an audience, but it just didn't have the build for, having the second book in there. So I'm like, okay, this time I need to kind of push a bit more and try to figure out some of those things that I did that were successful in the first one and not just rely on this baked in audience is going to come back. Because so now I'm taking like, okay, what was I doing differently during that first campaign that I didn't do the second, and how can I replicate that? So, yeah, so it's just about experimenting, right? And trying new things, and not assuming that because you had one successful launch that the third
For sure.
or fourth one is going to do well too, right? So how
Yeah.
does that
I mean, I think
affect?
it's just,
No,
oh,
go
I was
ahead.
going to
Sorry.
say, I think it's just a lot of times our own energy as well. We're super excited about that first book. And so other people are really excited about that first book. And then the second one comes out and you're excited about it, but you're not as excited about it. So maybe they're not as excited about it.
Right. Yes. And and it is a lot of work. So like, I mean, it's easy to think, okay, well, I did all of that work already. People are just going to continue along for the ride,
Yes.
but
But that's not
a
true.
lot of them will, but not all of them. And you need
Right.
to continually bring in new readers, right? So
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So how does
But it's
that,
hard whenever you've got series upon series. You're like, I've got to keep the energy on this series, and I've got to keep the energy. It can get to be a lot.
yes, 100%, especially when you're putting out multiple books a year. So, so now that's a good transition into, your strategy now, because we talked about you getting picked up, but what did it look like, I guess? Has your strategy changed now that you've been picked up, that you're traditionally published, being put in bookstores? Is your marketing strategy different now than it was back 2 years ago, or has it stayed the same, or are you having to do different things in order to carry that?
I guess it's probably evolved some. I've changed some of the things that I do, but I would say ultimately it's the same.
Okay.
I get on and I promote this book
Yeah.
and I promote
Nice.
Beggars. Those are the two that I do the
Yeah.
most promotion on. And it's pretty much the same. Again, I post about 3 times a day on each of the different platforms, and it's primarily the 5-second reels, text over, B-roll. Again, I did tell you that I have been working with a social media person, just to
Right.
kind of bring in a few extra things. But again, that's not all of that is not necessarily to sell books. It was to create community. I definitely feel like our genre, it's ripe for creating community. That's what
Yes.
our genre is about. So kind of
Absolutely.
ignoring that probably isn't always the best thing to do, because you're like, I'm writing about community and I should be doing a little of that as well,
Yes.
with the people out here. So I would say that's probably the only thing that's probably changed over the last 2 years. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same. I'm still, I kind of still promote Death Meets Cute kind of like I would as an indie, even though
Good.
it's
Yeah.
a traditionally published book, fully. They have the whole shebang. They're doing the audio, they're doing the ebook, everything. But I'm
Well,
promoting it the exact same way I would have done, for
right. And I get the impression too that that's what publishers are looking for now in a lot of ways, are
I'm
authors who
sure.
are able to promote their work like that.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Right.
Because there's from many people, there's less money going into, the promotion end of the book. Although Poison Pen has done a good job for me. I feel good about the promotional things that they have done for the books. So I feel lucky in that I feel like they put quite a bit behind, promoting them. But yeah, for sure. I mean, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they want an extra level of promotion
Of course.
from their authors? It's free. It's free for them, to do that.
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So I do want to talk about your new book a little bit, because it sounds really interesting. So, primarily the new platform, I
Bananas.
know, sorry. Yeah, so primarily in the new platform, it's more about the author's success journey and that sort of thing. But I do want to give you a chance to chat about it, because is it out already, or when's the release date?
It comes out April 28th.
April 28th. Okay, so we're 2 weeks away as from time of
Yeah.
recording, which is really exciting. and I'd love to hear a bit more about it.
Well, this is a cover. Death Meets Cute. And as I said, it's kind of a bananas um concept. It's basically the three witches from Macbeth falling into a rom-com. So this first book is the middle sister who is in the middle of an identity crisis, which actually all of the sisters are in a little bit of an identity crisis, but I would say she's for sure not sure this is what she wants to do with her life. And so it really is just a sweet little funny rom-com. There's a lot of Shakespeare references in it because it is the three witches from Macbeth.
Nice.
The vast majority of the side characters' names are from Macbeth, or not from Macbeth, from
From
just different
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare plays. Yeah, and most of it's pretty random. They're not necessarily connected to their Shakespeare character.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just a sweet little book. Basically, there's the witch Iris and her love interest Talon, and he dies on her lawn in the first chapter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Luckily, she knows some necromancy skills. So,
There we go.
so we're
Okay.
able to, you know, have the whole rom-com thing. But the meet cute is him dying on her lawn.
Wow. Well, and we're still a cozy fantasy, right? Like this is still like you're
It's
still
still
a
cozy
cozy
fantasy. Yes,
fantasy
it's
here.
totally cozy.
Yeah.
A lot of food references. He's baking throughout. There are recipes in the back, just like bakers. Yeah, it's kind of a
I love it.
bananas
Yeah.
concept, and it's also a
That's
trilogy,
such
and
a
it'll
good
be each of
hook.
the three
It's really
fifths.
such a
It is.
good hook.
It's a trilogy, and so each of the sisters get their own book, and then so they are each standalones basically, but then it's an interconnected standalone so that there's an overarching story within about the
Okay.
three sisters within the three books. And so you basically get your little
Right.
happily ever after in each book, and then you're going to get your happily ever after for the entire story as well.
I love it so much. And that sounds super interesting. And that is available April 28th. So be sure to check out Death Meets Cute. Different take on a cozy fantasy, a little bit necromancy and cozy
Yes.
fantasy and baking.
Yes.
It sounds like so much fun.
And death,
So I
you
guess,
know.
and Macbeth, and Macbeth. I love it. I absolutely love it. To close us off, can you just give our listeners, if you had one piece of advice for people who were looking at either shifting their writing career from, like I mentioned before, pivoting into something new, or they're looking at, I guess in just general success in their author career, what's one piece of advice that you can give to them?
I don't know. My biggest, I guess this does roll into the way that I market and the way that I write. It's always about consistency for me. That's how I get books written. It's consistency. I know exactly what my schedule is going to be. I usually leave a little extra time in there, for emergencies or things, but I know exactly how much I'm going to be writing and how, when it's going to be. Everything's really, really consistent. And I'm consistent with my marketing as well. Everything can be repeatable and it's consistent. And I think that's what that's why I've written like 25, 26 books is just consistency and just putting in the time. And everybody's consistency is going to be different. Mine is I'm able to have the kind of consistency because this is my job. I don't have a job outside of that. So I can have a lot of very structured amount of time. But I always tell people if they can be consistent in whatever it is that is consistent for them, whether that's work, writing a little bit on the weekends or if it's writing a little bit after work or whatever. And then again, just being consistent in your marketing efforts as well. Every morning I get up and that's one of the first things that I do is I make my social media posts and I'll post one of them and then I'll post one and they'll be in my drafts and I'll post one every couple of hours and the three posts generally that I do.
Right.
But yeah, just a lot of consistency. That's basically what has gotten me here is just consistency.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And I think, like you said, like not like people are working day jobs, people have families that they have to take care of, they have other commitments. But even if you're able to be consistent a little bit in whatever
Yes.
faculty
Yes.
you're able to, and just continue with that little bit, it all builds up over time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
figure out what works for you.
Right. Now, do you use any sort of organizational tools or that to kind of keep your structure in place, or do you just kind of develop a routine and a habit?
Yeah. I really
Yeah.
do kind of thrive off of that kind of structure. And so I have very set times that I write. And outside of that, even if like I'm all excited at the end of writing, and I'm like, I could maybe write some more later. That's not going to happen. I will not
Okay.
write any more later. But so yeah,
Yeah, I think that's good, because I fall into that trap all the time. I get really into what I'm doing, and I'm like, you know what? I could continue doing this for a couple hours, and then though maybe those 2 hours aren't as productive as they would have been if you had waited until you refresh the next day for that, scheduled writing time or
exactly.
whatever it happens to be, right? So I think that is good,
Exactly.
a good point. Yeah. Well, I think that is a great place to leave us for today's conversation. Thank you so, so much for joining me. This has been fun.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And everyone check out Death Meets Cute coming out in 2 weeks from today. And I'll use that to plug my Kickstarter as well because it is launching the same day on April 28th.
Nice.
So
It's
check
a
out,
good day.
it's a great day. It's a great day for cozy fantasy. We've got new release and a Kickstarter. So head over to Kickstarter, search for Flower and Forge, or find it in the show notes. I'll also link Death Meets Cute in the show notes so you can find that there as well. Thank you again, Janetta, and I hope we get to do this again
Thank
soon. This has been
you.
fun.